The sun was bleeding out over the rolling hills of Willow Creek Park, a fiery orange ribbon stretched tight across the suburban sky. It was the kind of sunset that made you stop and stare, the kind that reminded you time was slipping away. For James Carter, a retired Marine Corps sergeant major, it was more than a sunset, it was a deadline. He sat on a wrought iron bench, his weathered hands resting on a battered leather case. The park was quiet, save for the distant hum of a lawnmower and the faint rustle of leaves. This was her place, the spot where his wife, Margaret, had loved to sit and watch the world go by. And tonight, he was here to keep a promise. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The voice was young, sharp, and laced with an authority it hadn't quite earned. James didn't turn. He'd heard voices like that his whole literal book, voices, the kind that followed orders from someone in an office he'd never meet. They were just noise. The real conversation was between him and the fading light, between him and the memory of Margaret's smile. "Sir, the park closes at sunset. You're on private property." The young officer, his name tag read Officer Ryan, shifted his weight, gravel crunching under his boots. He was barely in his 20s, with wide eyes and a jaw clenched tight, like he was terrified of screwing up. James finally glanced at him, his neck stiff from age. The boy looked scared, which was odd. James was the one running out of time. "Just a moment, son," James said, his voice low and gravelly, like dry leaves skittering across pavement. "One song. That's all." A second voice cut through the twilight, colder and sharper. "Officer Ryan, what's the holdup? I told you to handle this." A woman stepped into view, her heels clicking on the stone path. Linda Harper, the HOA president, was all business, crisp blazer, tight bun, and a voice that could freeze a summer day. She was the queen of Willow Creek, and she didn't tolerate rule breakers. "I'm trying, Ms. Harper," Ryan stammered, his voice tightening. "He's refusing to leave." James ignored them. His world had narrowed to the case on his lap, the dying light, and the weight of a promise made 40 years ago. Margaret's voice echoed in his mind, clear as the day she'd spoken it. "When I'm gone, James, play for me. Just once, so I know you're okay." He kept promises in jungles and deserts, through wars and long nights of peace that felt harder than battle. He'd keep this one. His thumbs found the latches on the case. Click, click. The sound was loud in the quiet air, like a rifle bolt sliding back. Officer Ryan flinched, his hand darting to his utility belt. "Sir, do not move. I'm ordering you to stop." But James couldn't stop. He lifted the lid, revealing his trumpet, nestled in faded red velvet. It wasn't shiny or new, just a battered old horn, scratched and dented from a lifetime of use. He lifted it, the cool brass familiar in his hands, like an old friend. The last sliver of orange vanished, leaving a deep violet sky. It had to be now. He closed his eyes, drawing a deep breath. Then he heard the sharp hum of a taser being armed. Before he could play a single note, a bolt of white-hot pain exploded at the base of his neck. His body seized, every muscle locking into a rigid slab. His jaw clenched so hard his teeth ground together. The breath he'd taken was stolen, leaving a burning void in his chest. The world spun, trees, sky, and stone blurring into a dizzying smear. The trumpet slipped from his hands, hitting the ground with a sickening clang. That sound was worse than the pain. It was the sound of a promise breaking, louder than any explosion he'd heard in Korea or Vietnam. His body followed, collapsing onto the cold flagstones with a heavy thud. The smell of wet earth filled his nostrils, and the taste of copper coated his tongue. He tried to move, to reach for the fallen horn, but his limbs were dead weight. "Sir, stay down." Ryan's voice was high and strained. "Do not attempt to get up." From a second-story window across the lawn, 16-year-old Ethan dropped his phone, his mouth agape. He'd been live streaming, bored, when he caught the whole thing, the taser's crackle, the way Mr. Carter's body jerked and fell. No way, he thought, his heart pounding. He knew Mr. Carter not well, but enough. The old man had taught him how to tie a knot for a treehouse last summer, shown him faded photos of Margaret, her smile bright enough to light up the black and white paper. This wasn't right. Ethan grabbed his phone, his hands shaking. His live stream had only a handful of viewers, but he needed more. He needed the right people. He remembered the bumper sticker on Mr. Carter's truck, a Marine Corps emblem with Semper Fi below it. Always faithful. He opened Facebook, found the local Veterans of Foreign Wars page, and uploaded the clip. His caption was simple: "They're hurting a Marine at Willow Creek Park." His name is James Carter. Please help. Back in the park, James felt hands roll him onto his stomach, the stone scraping his cheek. A knee pressed into his lower back, not heavy but insistent. Cold metal kissed his wrist click then the other click. Handcuffs. The indignity hit harder than the taser. He'd held rifles, mortars, and the hand of a dying friend. He'd held Margaret's hand for nearly 50 years. Now his hands were bound like a criminal's. "You're under arrest for trespassing and resisting," Ryan said, his voice trembling, like he was trying to convince himself he'd done the right thing. Resisting? James thought bitterly. He hadn't been resisting. He'd been remembering. He'd been loving. His eyes found the trumpet, lying dinted on the ground, its brass dull under the park's harsh lights. He'd failed her. The sun was gone, and Margaret was alone in the dark. Miss Harper's voice dripped with satisfaction. "Good work, officer. Remove him immediately. This is a respectable community." Her heels clicked away, a judge's gavel sealing his fate. Ryan fumbled with his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 5 at Willow Creek. I have one in custody. Requesting transport." James was pulled to the bench, Margaret's bench, and forced to sit. The silence was suffocating, the ghost of a song that would never be played. He was alone, an 80-year-old man in handcuffs, his head bowed under the weight of a broken promise. Then, a sound broke the stillness, not a siren, but a low rumble, like the earth itself was stirring. It grew into the roar of motorcycles and a heavy truck. Headlights swept across the lawns, not flashing red and blue but steady white, driven with purpose. The engines cut out, and a new sound hit James like a shockwave. Thump, thump, thump. The rhythm of boots marching in unison, a sound from a lifetime ago. Ryan froze, his hand on his radio. 6 figures emerged from the darkness, stepping into the park's yellow lights. They wore no uniform, just jeans, work jackets, and USMC t-shirts, but their shoulders were square, their steps deliberate. At their head was a man in his 30s, his face hard as granite. James's breath caught. He knew that face. He'd mentored that scared kid, watched him become a man. Gunnery Sergeant Michael Reed. Reed's eyes scanned the scene, the terrified cop, the dented trumpet, and James in handcuffs. The Marines stopped 10 feet from the bench, fanning out in a silent semicircle. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their presence shifted the air like a storm rolling in. Reed stepped forward, his gaze locked on Ryan. "Explain this." Ryan swallowed hard. "This man is under arrest. You're interfering with a police investigation." "I didn't ask for procedure," Reed said, his voice low and dangerous. "I asked why Sergeant Major James Carter is in handcuffs." "He was trespassing," Ryan stammered. "He resisted." Reed took another step, his shadow falling over the young officer. "This man is 80. He's buried more friends than you've got. He just lost his wife, and you're saying he resisted? What did he do threaten you with his trumpet?" Ryan was speechless, his eyes darting to the silent Marines. "Take them off," Reed commanded. "Now." Ryan's hands shook as he unlocked the cuffs. Click, click. The sound was sweeter than any music. James rubbed his wrists, the skin raw. Reed picked up the trumpet, inspecting the new dent with a clenched jaw. He handed it to James, their eyes meeting. In Reed's gaze, James saw loyalty, anger, and something deeper. Semper Fi. Home. The Marines turned, forming a wall around the bench, their backs to the world, their focus on James. They were no longer a jury, but an honor guard. Strength flowed into James's old bones. He stood, his joints creaking, and raised the trumpet. The world fell away. There was only the darkness, Margaret's smile, and the duty he owed her. The first note was soft, trembling with grief. It hung in the air, fragile and raw. But the second was stronger, clearer, carrying a lifetime of love. Then came the rest, 24 notes of taps, each one a piece of his soul. The discipline of Paris Island, the terror of battle, the joy of Margaret's laughter, it was all there, pouring out in the mournful cry of the brass. He played for her, and her alone. Across the park, Ethan held his phone steady, his live stream now flooded with comments, hearts, flags, prayers. Tears welled in his eyes. He wasn't just recording an incident. He was capturing a sacred moment. The final note faded, leaving a profound silence. James lowered the trumpet, a single tear tracing his cheek. He'd kept his promise. Reed's hand steadied him, a silent "we've got you." Ryan, shrinking under the weight of what he'd witnessed, walked away, retreating to the patrol car that would now carry his shame. Reed and his men stayed until James was steady. "We'll take you home," Sergeant Major, Reed said. James shook his head. Thank you, Gunny, but I can make it. He needed to walk away on his terms. Reed understood. The Marine stepped back, raising a slow, respectful salute, not formal, but personal, from one generation to another. James nodded, the trumpet firm in his hand, and watched them march into the darkness, their boots fading into silence. 3 weeks later, the world had changed. Ethan's video had gone viral, sparking outrage. News trucks swarmed Willow Creek. Linda Harper issued a forced apology and vanished on vacation. Ryan was on leave, pending review. The police announced a new training policy, the James Carter Protocol for handling seniors. Letters poured in from veterans and widows, sharing stories of love and loss. Reed visited every Tuesday, bringing coffee, their silence a bond stronger than words. On a bright afternoon, James returned to the park, his suit crisp, the trumpet case light in his hand. The dent had been repaired, though a faint scar remained a reminder. He sat on Margaret's bench, the sun warm and golden. He didn't play. The song was done, the promise kept. He smiled, feeling her beside him, and knew he was no longer alone. His service had ended decades ago, but honor never does. What do you think about James's story? Should Officer Ryan have acted differently? Or was he just following the rules? How do we balance justice with compassion in moments like these? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about violence, fairness, and what it means to do the right thing. Your voice matters.